Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of the Any Key. Wow, we made it again to episode 12. This is the show where we talk about esports, culture, and news, and we bring up the discussions that everybody wants us to have. I'm joined here with my fantastic host, Nav. Welcome.
Hello.
How are you, girl?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Well, here we are. It's just you and me running the show today. Um, so how you been? What's going on?
I've been good. Not much has been going on. I went to a pub stomp on Sunday.
All right, let's jump right into the updates and tell us about the pub stomp.
So it was for Red Bull Battlegrounds, and Red Bull hosted three of them. So there was one in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver.
Did you take pictures, by the way?
I did take some pictures, yeah.
We should have gotten them up. Oh well, rip.
That's okay. I can go get my thunder sticks later or something.
During our interview, you can run off and go grab thundersticks before we finish the episode.
But yeah, so they had three events. One was in Toronto, one was in Montreal, and then one was in Vancouver. And I tried looking at Montreal and Vancouver and seeing what they had going on, but I couldn't find any tweets. So I guess people just weren't tweeting about it. But the event
they
was
had more. Some of them still they had a lot more than we did.
In Canada?
No, the Montreal and the Vancouver one did a lot better than Toronto.
I couldn't find any tweets about it.
I was just told by not the organizer, but
you know what? I think it was that guy that's opening up the eSports bar in
Alvin?
Montreal.
Oh no.
Yes.
I can't remember his life. Elemental. There it is.
Yes. Yeah. So that guy was probably appointed to host it. So there's that. Whereas
I think it was Cyberactive as well, or not Cyberactive. The whatever series. Something.
But so for the esports bars that are opening in Toronto, I feel like it was a missed opportunity for them because it's like they could have jumped on this and like maybe interacted with Red Bull and.
No, actually, it was pretty. Right? It's actually a pretty closed. It was a pretty closed system with Red Bull. It was like Red Bull wanted it to be a Red Bull only event, and I know it's only because I wanted to get involved with it.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm in Toronto, and we do Dota. Let's team up. I'll help promote it and whatever. And they're like, nope, we want to do this ourselves. This is Red Bull only. And I was like, oh.
Well, that's why the turnout was like 40 people, I guess.
I was like, oh, okay. Sure, I don't mind. Like I said, because for me, it's like, okay, well, if we're gonna do this, then we can help promote and just let us have like a table and we can promote ESChamp and whatever. And
well, the loudest group there was ESChamp.
So I heard.
And the biggest group was ESChamp too. So
oh, really?
We brought the ESChamp to the event.
Tamira said that our pub stomp did better than for the international, but
yeah.
Yeah, the pub stomps, the international pub stomps that we do are a lot of fun.
You a pub stomp veteran?
Only since Tamir came on board. I wasn't really into the pub stomps, but Tamir has been really adamant on ensuring that ESChamp celebrates the international, and because it's normally not what we do, right? We don't normally host pub stomps. It's not something that's a part of our DNA. But Tamir has made it very important that made it very clear that it's important for us as an organization to support the local community in cheering on and supporting the larger tournaments like the international. And this year we'll also be doing BlizzCon, just because it falls in line with what we do. And I think that it's just not. First of all, there's no one really doing it in Toronto. We discovered that last year that no one was attending, no one was doing BlizzCon, and that was quite unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see like who comes out to these events because like I spoke to some people there. Two guys said they would have been just watching it at home, but instead, since this event was going on, why not just hop on a train, come up here? The venue is right by the GO station, so it's like a short walk down, and then you're there. So they had 28 TVs actually that had the stream going up.
TVs?
Yeah, and they have like this really big projection screen that could also like broadcast a show or something, but it wasn't used because it wasn't in our section. We were in the coach's corner.
Like The show with Don Cherry.
Oh, like I mean, like they named that section in the sports bar, the coach's corner.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah.
what? But yeah, pretty much comes down to that. Um, we noticed last year, people actually came up to me and they're like, "So what are we doing for BlizzCon?" And it's like, what are we doing? I don't know. I didn't like. Were we gonna do something? And we, as an organization, I think we've done a lot of awesome stuff with the local Toronto community.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until it was too late that I realized that we should have put on something for BlizzCon. That there should have been an event. Just because we got used to other organizations that were more pub stuff, like more barcraft focused to
Yeah.
do those things, and then I didn't even pay attention. But apparently they're all gone now. So
Yeah, I noticed that there weren't very many in 2014.
2014, there were literally zero.
Non-existent.
Not like for StarCraft. I'm pretty sure not one barcraft happened in 2014.
Hmm.
And if it did, it happened so under the radar that I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
So basically, bar crafts have stopped in Toronto almost completely. And I guess I think the most cool thing about this pub stomp is I don't think I've ever seen a pub stomp for Dota in Toronto other than this one, like other than international, because the international there are three. So
Yes.
there are two theater events. One that happens downtown. One hope it happens in a really huge theater, and there's one pub stomp which we run because
Yeah.
we believe that people like to drink while watching. I don't know. People like to drink when they're watching these games, so we organize pub stomps. Um, but yeah, so overall, it sounds like you had a good time.
I had a good time because I was with good friends. So
Did they have any themed drinks? Please, where were the enchanted mangoes?
they didn't, but there was.
What? Okay, hold on. Oh
it
my
was
god!
it was the
All right, I'm
veggie
going to
that
teach
was
these
already
people
there.
I'm going to teach these people how to do this because
There was one that combined Bunny's name and someone else's name, so it was like a StarCraft looking drink. But
at
that's
a Dota pub stomp.
oh, I mean, like just on the menu, on the everyday menu.
Oh,
I forget what it was called, but I giggled.
all right. Well, that's so. Let's move on to the next piece of news. EGL this weekend. Oh
Yay!
my goodness. So if you guys are just tuning in, if you remember before in episodes we brought in the guys from EGL, their entire thing is they're trying to put on a grassroots tournament that brings the best of Toronto, I guess. Well, let's say like Southern Ontario's esports communities together. Something that's never been done. I want to point out that Toronto's esports communities have never gathered in the same room together to work together on anything.
You know, I just realized
What did you
the
just realize?
EGL people should have been at the pub stomp to promote their event slowly,
No, they
quietly, under
wouldn't
the
let.
radar.
Like I said, Red Bull wasn't letting us.
I mean, like, no, like, you're
Oh, you
talking to
mean like
people,
you
and
mean
then
like
it's like it just comes up type of thing, right? It's
you're
like,
such a ninja. You come in there and just start dropping cards in people's drinks. It's like, oh, here's one for you. Here's
but
one.
it's like all those people there, like, that however they thought about the pub stomp might have been like, oh my God, I wish there's more events. And it's like EGL is like kind of low key in a way that people haven't heard of it. Right?
Right now, people who know about EGL knows it through the different organizations and their different affiliations, right? So
Yeah.
the people who in StarCraft know about it because we're bringing the StarCraft people. Same thing with Dota's a little bit of mixture of the Dota group and then our group as well. So it's an interesting, healthy mixture. Um, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. You know what? For their first event, it's very rocky, but I think they're gonna pull it off. I think they are. I think it's good. Either way, it's gonna be fun for us because we're staying at the whole Alt Hotel. I told everybody I don't even care if this event is a flop because the Alt Hotel is the bomb. So
I wonder if it'll be the same as the one in
I
Montreal.
really, really pray that it looks exactly almost like wall to
Dog's,
wall.
Dog's favorite thing was the bench.
That was my favorite thing too. I tell people all the time the Alt Hotel was pretty legit.
But anyway,
So,
so the event is happening this weekend. What time does it start? On Saturday.
So 9 o'clock. If you're a player coming in, it's 9 o'clock. You get in. For PC players, we're looking probably most likely 11 a.m. start. So 10 o'clock check in, 11 a.m. Start time. But since this is tournament time, probably noon.
Mhm.
maybe even further, but we'll see. Um, our streams go live here on ESChamp. Be sure to watch StarCraft and Dota 2. We don't know if we're going to be using the ESChamp TV channel yet. Can't really say, but we'll figure it out. What else goes? There's going to be a lot of interesting speed runs if you're going to be at the event. Um, and I actually, you know what? I realized something. Guys, I have something to tell you about closer to the end of the show.
God
So,
damn it, Grandpa Esports.
snap. So, let's get it. Let's get this show on the road, though. Let's really get into the meats and potatoes of this show. Let's start off with Upvote. Good old Upvote. Upvotes. HoN back in the race. So this actually happened right before the last show came about, and I didn't know whether or not to talk about it because I was trying to hopefully get a guest.
Mhm.
But Heroes of Newerth acquired by Garena. Essentially, what this story is, what we're looking at is the people who made Heroes of Newerth, and I don't know if anyone really knows of it. Heroes of Newerth is pretty much a progenitor of the modern day MOBAs, like not including Dota 1 and
It was like 2009 or 2010 or something.
yes, I'm gonna go with that because it was definitely one of the earliest of MOBAs, and you know it struggled. Like being the first isn't always the best sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Because you have to make all the mistakes. So they were like,
Didn't you have to pay for this as
yes,
well?
that's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. That was the thing. You had to pay for it. So people were like, meh. And then League of Legends came out, and League of Legends is like, it's all free. You're
Wow.
all free now, right? And it's one of those things where, so basically, these guys have pretty much decided that these are the guys who loved HoN so much, and before this, S2 Games owned it, and now they've split off to Frostburn Studios. So now there are a whole bunch of new guys dedicated to HoN. So one of the questions I want to know, and unfortunately I wish some of our MOBA hosts were on here because they would have given some interesting feedback, is if this means HoN is back in the race. Because Heroes of Newerth is far, far, like, it's lost a lot of like
Mhm.
market share.
You had that one statistic that one time about who owns like the MOBA market and what was.
Yes.
Do you remember the breakdown of that?
I wish we had like a recap for our shows because it'd be easier if someone just played that. They'll get on that. It basically was, if I remember correctly, 66% belonged to League of Legends, and then it was Dota, and I want to say Smite. I don't.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Smite had like a weird percentage of
it had a
that.
low weird percentage, but enough to make it in third. Like it was like 5% or something odd like that.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna guess following that, Heroes of Storm is not, though it's not, it's still in beta. I don't know if it counts on that statistic.
Mhm.
And somewhere in that little in a crevice is probably HoN. And we're gonna go there and say HoN is somewhere there.
Right.
Because this team's still pretty active. They just celebrated their anniversary.
The
Uh,
Honiversary.
Honiversary, fifth and Honiversary. So only 5 years. So yeah, 2010 is what we're looking. Can you imagine how much the landscape has changed in such a short period of time?
Well, you already said that League like surpassed it with their free model. So it's like they lost probably a big chunk of their players to League, and then you have Dota, and then you have Heroes right now. So
It's weird.
and then Smite as well.
In Smite. So in a short amount of time, in 5 years in its existence, HoN has gone from the dominant MOBA, because HoN was sort of first and everyone was playing it, to pretty much dead last. So you have to be saying to yourself, what went wrong? You know, where can it get back up on the high horse? What does it have to do, basically, to get back where it needs to be? So
Do they have like an esports league? Yeah, they do, right?
yes,
But how big is that?
so if I remember correctly, Taylor, our production guy, our production technical director, was he used to actually like work on it. I remember he wasn't too happy whenever we mentioned HoN because of
Past
past
feelings.
interactions. But it's been riddled with a lot of problems. There's the notorious um, gym finals, like where they hosted a finals in a gym,
Yeah.
and that didn't go too well. I wish I could pull that up, but perhaps Master Duck will find it and throw it up on the screen. But they hosted one of their championship finals, like the finals for their league. Like this isn't a third party. This is them. They held it in like a high school gym, and people are
Hmm.
just like that hashtag production value.
Not even a university gym. God damn it.
No, no, no. Well, high school gym is cheap, right? So, question is, do we think Heroes of Newerth is going to get back up?
I don't
Top?
think so. Like it's I want to say it's like a saturated market at this point. And Smite is trying its hardest to make a dent right now. And I almost feel like Smite will Smite has taken that place that Heroes of Newerth had and now can't get back.
I agree. 100% agree. I think that it's funny because you took exactly the point I was going to make. Gosh darn you. Because I think that it's a slippery slope. It's fallen, right? It's fallen really far. Smite, for all intents and purposes, has a interesting, like, you're right. MOBAs are saturated, but I think Smite has an interesting spin on MOBAs, and it's enough to give them a solid space
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's different. In it's still the same, but it's a different experience. If you play Smite, you're gonna, if you play it on PC or if you play it on console, different experience than playing League of Legends, different experience than playing Dota, and it's gonna have its own kind of people who have fun with it.
I have a friend that says like all the time that he really wants to get into Smite, but he just for some reason can't, but he keeps trying.
I,
It's like that one food that everyone hates. Like for me that's it's olives right now. I try them and I'm like I want to be able to enjoy them. And it's like no, I still don't like olives.
I have
But
someone
eventually
who
it'll happen.
I have someone who actually actively messages me on ESChamp every time we announce a tournament and asks me when we will be hosting a Smite tournament. He actively seeks me out every time and says, "When is the Smite tournament?" And he actually emailed me once right after Land Nation and said, "Will you be adding Smite next year?" I was like, "Oh," but it basically means right now is people are ingrained. It really is. If you play League of Legends, you're not leaving League of Legends unless Riot was into literally implode.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. If you play Dota, like you're not going anywhere. The only people who are going to just sort of
Well,
fall
Dota
off.
even right now, like Steam is giving them support that the community was asking for so long, and now it's finally happening. And it's like you have all the reason and more to stay with Dota now, rather than like
No, that's exactly
yeah.
it. So it's a question of, um, I
You'll
don't
have
think
your hipsters that play HoN,
that
and they'll stick to it.
I like how if we were to give people like a persona, the
They're
Han
the
people
hipsters.
would be the hipsters. The Han people are hipsters. Um, it's hilarious. But no, I think that if you're ingrained in your mobile, you're not changing it anytime soon. Han has fallen from grace. I don't know what they could do to really pull it back. Uh, they could hold a huge tournament with X amount of dollars, but it's not going to be enough. I think if you've seen one MOBA, you've pretty much seen them all at this point. Did you know that Bandai Namco is releasing a MOBA
No.
called Supernova?
And when is
I
this scheduled for?
I can't even know. It's like an alpha. But I noticed it because I saw people like I not RTZ, Iezi, the guy from Dota, the caster from Dota. He was casting their alpha tournament, and I was like, really? Those esports dollars must have been sweet. And I was just like, I don't even know how to. It's honestly the concept of it was so interesting. Like I was interested in the concept, but it's like I didn't want it. I didn't want to invest in it. I just didn't want to. It was just too much. It's supposed to be an RTS mixed with a MOBA. So you're controlling multiple units in clusters as opposed to one. So it was interesting. The whole premise of it I thought was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it wasn't enough for me to say, yes, I will try this, or yes, I want to buy it, because I'm kind of like, I don't know. MOBA feels like a dirty word to me now, because I think everybody and their mom wants to make a MOBA. Everyone wants to be
Did
like,
you know I'm making a MOBA?
it's just, oh my goodness. So let's. It's just, I don't know. I'm tired of MOBAs. I'm tired of it. There's no more MOBA. Like, I think Supernova is just the last straw for me. Bandai Namco, please stick to making Tales games, fighting games, Tekken, but no MOBAs. No more MOBAs. Uh, let's go on to the next topic. Whew. Please don't be a MOBA topic. Oh no, not a MOBA topic. So here we go. So this is the interesting thing. Turtle Entertainment, the people who own ESL, have been reportedly, and this is important, reportedly sold to a Swedish media giant called MTG. So, wow, like this is big news. ESL pretty much right now is, I would have to guess, the largest esports organization. Would you say the largest esports organization in the world? I'm gonna go out there and say they're the largest. And if
Yeah.
they're not, they feel like the largest. I guess MLG or DreamHack is probably the
Well, yeah, like
closest.
those guys are like. It depends on like what you mean by like largest. Like they could be like the largest production talent type of company, or are they the largest esports company? Like they
Let's say
differentiate from
largest
others and
league. I
stuff.
might say largest league because I think they're the only ones right now that has internet. Like they have North American and European activity consistently. That's how I'm going to measure largest. I don't like, that's probably not a scientific way of doing it, but most organizations currently operate either in North America or
Or in
either in
Europe,
Europe.
yeah,
And there's very
yeah. Their
few.
Burbank office was a good investment and venture, I'd say.
I think it's still getting off the ground. I don't even
Of course.
I'm not 100%. I obviously I jumped on esports morning to say that I didn't think it was going to survive. I still stand by that. I don't think that it's gonna.
Well, they just took Emily.
I know.
Cry.
It's beautiful. I don't think it's gonna survive, and not because it's a bad investment, not because it's a poor investment. I think that um, they might not be able to give it the support they need. And this actually all depends on how.
But if MTG is acquiring them, don't you think they would want to grow the North American scene?
Okay, so this all depends on why MTG acquired them, I guess, and that's what is going to be this discussion point: is why MTG acquired.
Like, you know how sometimes people make apps to be sold.
Yes, but I don't think that ESL was designed that way.
Yeah, it's designed as a company to be sold, but they
MLG
saw the
designed
need
as a
for
company.
it, and then
Like MLG is definitely a company that was designed to be sold. I don't think ESL was designed to be sold. I think, like, I don't know the exact history of ESL, but I'm going to assume that people who designed it or created it are like, oh, this doesn't exist and this might be fun to do and let's build this. And then it became a company and they're like, oh, let's make this into a real company. And then a whole bunch of other people jumped on board. Um, oh, I guess, you know what? For people who don't know, MTG stands for the Modern Times Group. What do you think the equivalency? The equivalency of it in Canada would be Bell. I'm going to take the jump and say Bell.
are they like internet, telephone, and
Yeah, they're like a conglomerate of
okay.
things, but they look like they're mainly television. They have like they're a lot of it's television. I don't know if they own any. No, it looks like they only own television channels. Never mind, I take that back. I thought
So
they were
like a
oh,
CBC, but not really. CBC's like
no,
bad right
CBC
now.
is like a terrible example. CBC is like falling apart at the seams. It's like let's see, what's an American equivalency? Let's go with that.
NBC.
NBC, like a Disney. Disney owns a whole bunch of stuff.
Disney's way too big because they just keep swallowing everything with
Yeah,
them.
but that's what I mean. Like these guys are big too. Like these guys are in Europe. These guys own a whole bunch of television channels. Disney owns a whole bunch of television channels. Say Time. Let's say Time Warner. Time Warner that owns a whole bunch of stuff. So MTG would probably be the equivalency of Time Warner owning a whole bunch of channels, um, and basically filling up their repertoire. So you know what I wonder if what this means? I
What?
wonder if they're going to put ESL on television because they have that power now. They own a station. So
Okay, well, we saw with like ESPN, the poll was like 1.2, but in Europe, do we know how?
Europeans and Koreans are different.
Okay, yeah.
Like Europeans and Koreans consume stuff still through television. From what I gather, there's still a healthy amount of young people, I think, who
Oh,
watch.
in Australia too, probably because Netflix doesn't work there. Ha 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 ha.
You know, for whatever the right thing, I think that there's going to be, it's going to be on television.
Hmm.
I think we're going to
Do
see.
you think they'll let ESL remain as like an independent brand under their umbrella?
See, this is okay.
Kind
See,
of like Twitch and Amazon,
you hit
how
it right.
Amazon could have been like, this is Amazon Games, but then they're like, no, you can remain as Twitch, but you are part of
You
us.
hit the
Yeah.
nail right on the head. That's exactly what I was going to bring up next. When I said that I think ESL America was going to be collapsed, I didn't think of it because I think ESL America was going to fail naturally. I think that I don't think that MTG will leave it as is. Like I know MTG has had like they've had other forays in esports. So someone will say they know they've been
What
around
are the other
esports.
forays?
They've worked with DreamHack. They've popped in before. Like I remember 2 years ago, they made like a post somewhere on Reddit. Like they've been around esports before. This is not like it's their first foray into esports. But from what I know, this is their first acquisition
Right.
in esports. From what I know, if you know what someone in the channel
Reported
knows, yeah,
acquisition.
reported acquisition. I guess that should all be emphasized that neither ESL or MTG. Actually, MTG might have said something, but ESL is definitely not saying anything. Um, from what I can tell, this isn't reason. What I think is, I wonder if will MTG say, "All right, we now have the esports formula. Let's dismantle it, or let's meddle with it. Let's take it apart and try to use it for other purposes." And if they do something like that, I think that you will see that ESL might fall apart. As ESL is now, I think ESL America would probably thrive. I think it would thrive. I think they have the resources. I think they're fine. I think they would do really well by themselves. With a partner, especially someone in the old world, I like to say old world because of, just how long and how
Different
big they
mediums.
are, different mediums. I feel like they might meddle and treat like their other, their higher, their acquisitions. Who knows? It's hard for me to say, but I feel like
But also it doesn't bring to point if like yes, it says ESL, but ESL as a like if we get into the nitty gritty details, ESL as a whole in terms of the North American one as well and the European one, or like
I think
you
that
know what I mean?
I don't think you can buy one of the. I feel like ESL North America isn't strong enough to stand on its own. So if
Hmm.
you were to buy ESL,
You buy
obviously
it all.
you if you were to buy ESL,
They have a New York
buy,
office too,
yeah, but you when you buy ESL, you'd be buying the German,
right?
like the actual German company, which is a parent company, as far as I know, to the other the other divisions or the
Right.
other subsidiaries. So you're going to just take that whole thing up and you're going to scoop it as a pile. I think it wouldn't make sense to leave ESL America on the table because I don't think it would thrive on its own. I think it might like deprive the resources of its mothership. I think it might suffer because ESL brand is what lends it so much weight,
Hmm.
right? So either or, if ESL now if they're left to do what they want to do, if this is an acquisition like the Amazon Twitch acquisition, and they do whatever they want, it's gonna be fine.
There
No,
would be a lot of chairs that they'd have to relabel,
yeah,
rebrand.
oh, absolutely. But if they do it like that, then no problem at all. I think they'll do just fine. Uh, if there starts meddling happening, they start trying to do it their way. They want to do it like that, then. And you know what? I think this is actually going to go through because even though ESL is declining to comment on the story, they're not debunking the story. They're not saying it's not true.
Well, I don't think you'd want to even get into that even if it wasn't true.
Why not? Like if it wasn't true, it'd be easy to just say no. don't believe that's actually happening. No, that's not happening. If it wasn't true.
Well, you saw the kerfuffle with like the Twitch and the
Okay.
CS:GO League
Wait,
and all that. So it's
yes.
like,
Oh yeah.
when then that's like the message got muddled,
But
right?
it's so
So
easy to say no, though, right? But the thing is, okay,
it
so
is, but it isn't at the same time,
true.
right?
Okay, but if you were to say something like with ESL, if you were to say something along the lines, or if you don't say anything at all, like when Twitch was getting bought by Amazon, they were like, we don't comment on rumors and speculations. And, turns around, yeah, they were bought, right? So I think it's obviously, I'm going to treat this pretty much as fact at this point. Because this is a discussion show. So even if this doesn't come to light, it's still nice to imagine or to discuss what it might be like if they got swooped up and absorbed. Um, it's totally going to be like a Vivendi. I mean, sorry, Vivendi owning Blizzard Activision. This big European company owning owning this other company that affects North America. So we'll see. Uh, any other thoughts on that topic before we go on to the interview?
Um, I'm excited to see what comes in the next few days. Um, I guess, yeah.
I
Not
don't know.
much else.
I hope. I hope we're.
If they are acquired, like I hope it means it's going to be bigger, and it'll result in continuous growth, and not like the opposite.
We'll see. I hope. I hope you're right. I hope we do see some continuous growth. I hope that we. I hope it just basically is like a Twitch and Amazon
Yeah,
relationship.
I liked that model of purchasing and remaining as like a separate brand. Like
Because
imagine Google
sometimes,
bought them, right? It would have been just like YouTube,
well, that's what
right?
people. That's what they were. I think that's what I was hearing is that the reason why they didn't go with Google or YouTube's offer is that it would basically be YouTube is like, oh well, we need this from you. We're gonna strip you of all the stuff that's important to you, and we'll put it in us, and away we go.
Yeah.
YouTube, Twitch, YouTube Live,
Well, it's
right?
like Facebook bought Instagram, but it remains as Instagram. Like at times I even forget that it's like, oh yeah, Facebook owns them.
But those are the best acquisitions, though. But those
Yeah,
don't
I think
always
so too.
happen. I think those don't always happen. Like those are the ideal. Those are the ideal acquisitions where people are left to do their own. What sometimes happens with acquisitions is a company acquires another company just to strip them of their technology or their talent and just let the company just fade away, right? That happens quite a bit in many times. For example, Oculus Rift. Like we don't know what's gonna happen with that. That's not the best example because that's kind of set to be on its own. But Facebook has a higher plan. Oh, you know what a good example is? MLG. MLG is the perfect example of people who have acquired and just left things at dust. So MLG in its earlier days acquired several websites in the esports space, Gotfrag being one of them, Smashboards, um, MMO Champion. Oh my goodness, Algora Games. Algora Games wasn't a website, but it was game battles. And the only one to survive, really to survive under the MLG brand, was game battles. Smashboards broke away and was able to like crawl away with its body like limping, and it's like, help me, somebody, and the community was able to resurrect it. But a lot of the brands that MLG purchased withered and died.
I
Everything
heard that there was like one that they didn't mean to kill, but they accidentally did, and they were like, whatever.
I could, I'm pretty sure Gotfrag was that. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I think that might have been
I feel
it.
like Gotfrag was an acquisition that they really didn't want to kill. They got because Gotfrag was very valuable to esports. Like Gotfrag, I mean, to esports, Gotfrag, I remember was the
It
closest
has
thing.
like 10-year-old articles on it
Oh my
that
god!
would be useful as like a historical medium to
Like
be like,
it,
it's like, oh yeah, I have a PhD in esports, based off of this world of knowledge.
like I don't want to say something silly like it's the New Yorker of esports or like the ESPN, but it had a really deep history in terms of content it produced, in terms of the people that worked there. It covered the CS scene at the time, which was a very strong and buzzing scene. So when MLG acquired it and they just pooped all over it, because they turned everything into an MLG spin, and it just the content became so it became difficult to digest.
Hmm.
So it it's that's an example I think of of acquisitions gone wrong. MLG bought up a whole bunch of came into the space, bought up a whole lot of websites, and then killed off 85% of them and kept the remainder and
And Smashboards
released a
crawled
few.
away.
And then Smashboards crawled away like bleeding, crying for help. Game Battles was the only one to survive. One of the weird things is I can't understand whatever happened to Agora Games. They bought Agora Games, and everyone assumed that MLG was going to start making its own games, and never heard anything about it again.
Or maybe they were going to, but then they didn't.
Well, that's the thing. It's so weird. I honestly thought they were going to do something like that because they, made a statement that Agora Games will help integrate MLG's algorithms into future games and leaderboards and no. And then no one talks about it again. I
Yeah.
wonder if I was to Google Algora Games, what would come up? Uh, I'm fascinated to know. Oh, the website is still there. So Agora Games. Oh, it looks like it was a part of Smite. So maybe MLG released it. Nope,
Right.
never mind. Still acquired. It's still there. Still
It's shackled somewhere in the
some shackled
basement.
in the basement. That's exactly what it is. It still says it right there. Acquisition acquired by MLG in August 2009.
Wow.
And it looks like they released several titles. So I guess it's still under MLG somewhere, hidden away. Yep, it says Algora Games MLG. What a weird
Mhm.
acquisition. To this day, I still don't know what value it brought MLG. Still, I have no clue. Anyways, one day I'm going to actually research and see what this does and why Algora Games is actually important. I'm going to assume they create some sort of competitive aspects for games. That's the only thing that could even remotely come across to my mind, but that might not be the case. Let's go into this interview. So, guys, I wanted to get a really special, awesome guest here on the Any Key. Problem is, he lives in Finland. So the time that the Any Key starts, he would be at 3 a.m. and he would not be able to be on. So instead, I recorded an interview with him and asked him a bunch of questions. So we're gonna play that interview, and then right after that, Nav and I are going to discuss what we heard. So let's take it away. Interview. That's fine. Can we talk and then I'll be heard or? All right, guys, welcome to this interview series of the Any Key. I am joined here with Weldon of MindGamesGG.
Hello.
Weldon, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
That's
Definitely.
awesome. So, you know what? Tell us a bit about your history and who you are and how did you get into esports?
Okay. How much time do we have again?
Let's
Uh,
give us a
how did,
TLDR.
okay, how did I get into esports? I think it's like it's kind of my one hobby intersected my other hobby. And so I guess when I was 28, I thought about changing my profession. I'd been one of those teachers of English who traveled around the world like teaching English in various different countries. And I wanted to move back into sports because I'd been a pretty high-level swimmer for 2 decades or so,
Okay.
and so I wanted to go into coaching, and so I worked my way through up into a head coaching role, and then I went and I got my sports psychology degree. and that all happened starting around 2010. And then this was my hobby, coaching, and I was trying to turn it into my profession. And then my other hobby, gaming, kind of intersected it when I had my first son, and I couldn't play video games anymore, so I had to start watching them. And that's when I discovered esport, and I saw, oh look, a bunch of people who need coaching and need sports psychology. So
Do you like, I gotta rescue these people? You're like,
it was purely the pain that I saw in the faces on the screen. I was like, okay, I actually studied sports psychology for exercise psychology. So my whole mission was to essentially save America from diabetes.
Oh.
Exercise psychology is based
mission.
almost completely around motivation.
Okay.
And I don't really sit well with the idea of like sports psychology, which is you have this one like hyper-focused mental trainer professional who's dedicated to this single athlete who pays him tons of money to like make himself slightly better. Like that's not my view of the world or how it should function. So I wasn't really ever planning on going into professional mental skills coaching at the elite level.
Okay.
But then like esport is totally different because it's not a bunch of champions who are like have their lives together, and are trying to go from silver medal to gold medal. Like it's a bunch of people who are just in a lot of pain, like out there on stage, and don't really know what to do to get over the things that are plaguing them. And there's no infrastructure around them to support that. So
tell me about mindgames.gg. Tell me, how does that fit into your mission?
Well, it was just a blog I started writing in 2010, and I was just kind of doing it to talk about what I saw in esport and how sports psych applied to that. And then, yeah, once I started getting approached by pro teams, I just expanded it. I turned it into more of like a magazine. So now I have 5 other writers, I think, and I wanted to make it a safe place to come to learn about sports psych. So everybody who writes for my site has to either be licensed or qualified in some way.
Oh, wow.
In the psychological field. So they're all either counselors or sports psych trainers.
Oh.
And so everything you read on that site is very scientific based, and also it's peer reviewed by us. Like we all read each other's articles. So that's kind of like the current mission, is to provide solid foundational evidence-based mental skills training for people who want it.
So just to give the audience a bit of structure here about what we're talking about, if they've ever been to this site, you're gonna I perused to the site and I saw some interesting articles like how to get over solo queue anxiety. Now I don't know if anybody else, like I personally have anxiety with StarCraft and ladder queuing because you're like, ugh, so stuff like that.
I actually switched from StarCraft back to the team games because I couldn't handle the stress of like solo queuing, like a solo game one-on-one.
So are there answers for people like that? Is that like for the value proposition of the site, if I'm like, I have this mental block of getting over solo queue or to ladder up, am I going to find the answers on your site?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that I try to make content that everybody can digest. So we have writing, and you can go search articles on whatever topic. And then I also have my podcast, and then I have a Q&A show. So if you have specific questions, you can post them there, and I'll answer them on my Q&A show. And then we also, I think, are going to get into video soon as well. So
is this geared to all the esports, or is it specifically like one esports over the other?
Well, of course, I talk about League of Legends a lot because that's what I've been playing recently. But I'm starting to coach in Counter-Strike.
Ooh.
And
it's
I've
a big one to tackle.
Yeah, I've played a lot of different games. So mental skills training actually functions in all of human performance.
Right.
So these are transferable skills that you can use. And the research has looked at like where these things are applicable. So I'll just list off a few of the things that you would improve by making yourself better at esport. So test taking is performance, leadership is performance, public speaking, obviously. And then entrepreneurship is also something that is like very performance related, and sex. So if you want to get better at sex,
you pretty much hit all the best things in the world, right?
So it's like sports has always been one of the best engines for self-development. Like it's something that forces you to develop, and of course it can also be a really pathetic experience that ruins a lot of people's lives, but it has the opportunity to provide that place for growth, and esport has the same opportunity. Like if you work if you use esport as a way to develop yourself, you can take that self, those skills that you developed, and use them in any area of your life.
So currently you do coaching, am I correct, for pro teams?
Yeah, I also coach professionally.
So what teams do you currently coach for that we might be able to recognize?
Yeah, Copenhagen Wolves, which they have a League of Legends squad, and that's the squad I'm not coaching them. Like, their coach is Carl Cray, but I'm their mental skills trainer.
Okay.
And then I'm also coaching Counterlogic Gaming, the League of Legends squad, and we're kind of starting with the CS:GO team, and I gotta get feedback from them on how they like the first few sessions.
So the stuff you've been practicing is being used currently in this esports world, right? So there's some real world experience with it. With that being said, how is coaching, sort of done currently in esports, and do you think it can be improved?
Well, currently it's based around, like, coaches are recruited with the idea of trying to come in with built-in authority. So that means that they either have to be ex-professionals at the game or good at the game in some way, but not exactly professionals, because there's not a lot of people who quit playing pro to go just coach if they're offered a job. But that's kind of like the career path, I guess. And the problem is that they're essentially right now there to provide second opinions or a nanny for the team. So they aren't really doing much coaching as far as coaching people. And when you coach a team, you're coaching people, you're not coaching the sport. So yeah, you are running drills and stuff like that, but most coaches in traditional sports, like all the drills that they know, they've been doing them for 10 or 20 years, and they just pick them up from books. And esport is getting to the point where you can just like get the players to run through drills and they can develop themselves strategically if you push them. And I think the real work, the most important work of the coach is actually to manage player motivation and to keep them dedicated to their path and help them with all of the hurdles and challenges they have to overcome. So that requires a whole different skill set than what people are prepared for right out of the gate. And luckily, all of that is a skill set, so it can be learned, it can be trained.
Should we start seeing coaches that have this level of training involved? Like, do you think coaches should have a little bit of certification or something behind them before they become pushed onto the coach scene?
I think certification isn't necessary because you can pick up a lot of these skills through experience, but it is something that would push the scene forward. And actually, I think there's two ways it could happen. Either you pull in coaches from other sports who already have these, these experiences, or I'm actually started a website, and it's a website around a network. It's esportcoaching.net, and it's if you go there now, you will just see a sign up because we're not launching our first content until 2 weeks from now. But we are going to have a full curriculum for coach training, and I've already lined up a bunch of professional coach trainers from the university that I work at and do research at. And so I think that we're going to try to provide this kind of like certification that you can take to a team and say, look, I put in the time, I put in the effort, I have experience, and I've gone and like professionally developed myself, and this is the path I'm taking. So I think that, I don't think that the certification should be required, but I think that it's a tool that people can use to demonstrate that they're dedicated to their profession, and that will mean that, people have a chance to improve themselves.
So that sounds like you'll add value to a coach. So if a coach is trying to be able to assess their worth, or a team manager's assess the worth of the coach, if they have this, I'm not gonna call it, I guess I'll avoid the word certification, but this thing on their resume, it's going to add value to say, hey, I am able to add a little bit more than just drills.
Yeah, this is how it works in traditional sport. I mean, you're a professional coach at the top of hockey, and you're a member of the, Hockey Coach Association of America or something. And so you're just a member of that group. You get their newsletter every month. It has tips. It has research. And you go to a conference once a year or twice a year, and you do a bunch of workshops. So we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to have that place that you can join, and of course it's all going to be front facing on the blog, so you can just go and read it all.
So if we're talking when you say motivation, I'm starting to have flashes of Any Given Sunday and Al Pacino coaching a bunch of people into a room. So are we gonna have is that what
fight for the inches? Every inch is an inch.
Is that it? Is that the kind of motivation that we're looking at? Every inch is
I think we have to adjust it because technically an inch in esport is massive. So we need to go down to the millimeter. I think it'd be like, we got to fight for the millimeters. Sorry, Americans. Eighths of it. We have to fight for the eighths of an inch, the 16ths of an inch, 30 seconds. Yeah.
But is that the kind of motivation we're looking at, like those kind of
That-
rah rah rah, or is
so-
this?
I mean, motivation is kind of a sliding scale. You have
Right.
on the one hand, you have the biscuit or the cookie that you give people, the money, and that's wow.
I know.
Did that get picked up?
It might be.
Or was I just dancing
You might have just been
magically
dancing.
to nothing? Okay, well, I heard music, so I started dancing. If you guys didn't hear music, then sucks to be you. So on the one hand, you have motivation like external motivators, right? So the things that drive you, like trying to beat somebody else,
Right.
or the payment and things like that. And then the other hand, you have internal motivation. So you're striving to like defeat other people or beat yourself, or you have a battery. The batteries come included, kind of.
Right.
So when we're talking about motivation, sometimes for high-performing athletes, the external motivation is not enough, and it shouldn't be. I mean, at the top level, when we look at motivation, we see that these people, these champions, have really high external motivation and really high internal motivation. So they're driven on both ends. They're driven by their pay scales, and they're also driven by just this burning desire to be the best. And so the problem is that you can't have that burning desire like 7 days a week, 365 a year. And so your coach should become an expert in your internal motivators and kind of figure out what drives you and help you pave that path so that you can, get back on track when your motivation sags. And
So
then
that's like after losses and also during wins as well. So it's a sort of a mental guide.
yeah, and most especially during training, because the whole point is to train how you want to play so that you can play how you train. So it's most crucial during training, and it doesn't hardly even matter what a coach does during competition, because by then they've either screwed it up or they've succeeded.
Exactly. So a coach, pretty much the work begins before the tournament, not during the tournament.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a very interesting way to kind of frame it. And I didn't even really think, because you see, when I don't know if you ever remember the Championship Gaming series, or when they really try to hype up the role of a coach. I do remember this thing where you have these coaches just screaming behind these players, to try to get them back into the game. I don't know if that's counterintuitive or that was all hype for the drama of the show. But I guess the work of a real coach begins before the actual tournaments and before the lights even hit.
Yeah, so what that coach was trying to do was help them focus on what they were supposed to be doing instead of focusing on their own mistakes or whatever. So you try to drive that focus to the game using, I don't know, shouting or whatever method you typically use. But that stuff usually works if you trained it. So if you're always there during training, shouting at them, focus on the game, and it helps them, eventually they'll learn to rely on that. And then when you do it in
like a trigger.
competition, yeah, it helps them.
Okay.
So yeah, of course it could be performance enhancing, but so can handing them a cup of coffee if that's the thing you've trained them to, to calm them down or whatever.
Okay, what are some of the common mistakes you found when players seek to improve?
I think the biggest one is what you just mentioned, the whole idea of planning for the long term. I think thinking short term is something that's pretty natural because everybody is very young in esport. And also we don't have any evidence of how long these careers are going to last. But esport is one of the least physically demanding sports that exists. And so it's highly probable that esport careers will span multiple decades. And I think that people's...
Even though that you hear things like the mentality of a player's peak is around their early 20s?
I mean, based on what? No research has ever shown that.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
In fact, it's just the opposite.
Oh.
People get more strategically...
so is that a mental thing then?
advanced.
Is that because they believe that, it ends quickly, that people...
It's because we have no evidence to the contrary, and people just make assumptions.
I see.
So they're just it has to be something about reflexes. But, I mean, really what's happening is people's time is getting eaten up. You have 13 hours a day to train when you're a teenager, and you're, in your early 20s, and then all of a sudden you don't. And so people are, more interested in other things because the payout is not equal to the reward. I could quit playing video games in 2009 and like start my career and make way more money for way less stress and effort.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
now it's kind of floating the other way, and so the incentive is like reversing.
I see.
And the research shows that people's reflexes don't really start degrading until their late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Really? I mean, I could have still been a pro player. What have I been doing this entire time?
You still can be a pro player.
My God.
You don't have to. I mean, you can start training in your. Okay, this is interesting because we've learned this from looking at marathon runners that the decade that you aim for is the one where you run your best times in. So if you start training when you're like 25 and hit your maximum expertise when you're like 30 as far as your physical skills, and then you learn your strategy for the next 10 years, like that is your peak. So you could compete from 30 to 40.
It's funny. I was under the impression when I became an entrepreneur that after my 20s, my prime was over, and I should choose a different field because I'm no longer a young spring chicken. And then
Do you know that the median age for millionaire and up entrepreneurs is like 40. Okay, I just read this morning. 47.
47.
Yeah. So we have this myth also in the entrepreneurial world that like young people is where it's at. Like that's where the $1 million startups are at. But actually you get all of these things as you age, like social capital, actual capital, tons and tons of experience and mistakes and this network. And then you can become a much more successful entrepreneur. And so the most successful entrepreneurs are actually the older ones, the ones who are like in their 50s and they're like quitting their jobs as managers and CEOs or whatever, and starting companies.
I totally ate up the hype, so that was my bad on that. So what is the first step someone would take when they're starting to look to do mindful practicing?
Mindful practicing. So are you talking about like a player who's super stressed out with the game, or somebody who wants to start on this path toward being a professional player? Or
let's say someone who's looking to start on the path to being a professional player. What are some of the steps?
So they're not playing anymore for fun. They're playing because they like want to get better.
Maybe they started watching esports. They're like, okay, this is something I want to be. Like, I want to make this my career.
Okay. Well, I think actually the first thing to start with is what I was talking about, these long-term goals. Because if you look at the work that people do, I mean, everybody does the same amount of work in a given day. I mean, I might work 4 hours on something, or I might train 4 hours, and another guy might train 4 hours. But it's what you're doing that makes the difference between that time spent. And so, like, what your mentality is going into a game, like if you're just trying to gain like a few points in rank, then, and that's your end goal for the end of the year, then that might not be the best thing to drive you. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a really big fan of setting really bold goals out there that kind of drive your mentality to, in the day-to-day, to do the work that's needed to, in a way that will like make you excel much faster. And so I think that like, you should set goals like, I want to be a pro in a year, because that will make you act that day in a way that is going toward that absurd goal. And of course, yeah, you might not hit it, but you will have put in the effort and be much farther than you were if you had set your goal to be like, well, I want to be like this certain rating, somewhere below or somewhere like within where the pros are or something. So start with your goals and your mindset of growth. So you're in a long-term thing. You're not going into a game and trying to win or lose. You're going into a game because you're not a pro yet, but you're going to be. And so everything that you learn in this game is a win for you. It doesn't matter if you win the game or lose the game. The point is that you play the game and that you extract from it all of the experiences that you can. So now once you have the right mindset, like going in, this growth mentality, then you can start thinking about being mindful. So
what's the best way to get sort of feedback on that? Like if someone's going to that way, what's the feedback mechanism with that process?
For mindfulness or for the goal setting thing?
Both.
I guess for mindfulness, well, let's go to the goal setting thing, I guess. I think that your support network is pretty crucial. I like to say that there's 3 people that you need to make sure that you have around you, and that is your cheerleader. So this is somebody who boosts your ego completely independent of your pursuit of your game. So they appreciate you for things about your personality that is independent of like your success in esport or not. And so you can go to them to boost yourself up after a game so that you can go into the game and critique yourself, because actually that's most of the work that you need to do is critiquing yourself. The second person you need is your mentor, and this should be the person who really helps you guide you along your goals. And I think that you should test them. Like if you think that you have a mentor and you go to them and you say like, I want to be a professional player by 2016, and they're like, I just can't even imagine you doing that, then that's not the kind of person you really want hanging around you and advising you, because they can't even envision the path that you want to take. And so they can't help you see how your steps fit into that or not. And so search around for a mentor who can see that vision for you and who's, either 10 years advanced on living through life or is already where you want to be, like somebody who's already a pro player and can tell you, how they got there and analyze the steps you're doing. And then the third person you need are partners on your journey. So these will change all the time, because as you get better and better, you ditch the people who are stationary behind you and you meet new people along the way. But it's always really good to have those people you're accountable to. And so whether that means like you're in a little Skype group or you have a Google Hangouts and just every morning you talk about like the thing that you want to accomplish that day to keep you on task for this long-term sprint, then that's what I would recommend for accountability and feedback.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think our audience is going to grab a lot of tidbits of information from this. So tell us, Weldon, where can they find you on the web?
My site is mindgames.gg, and so that's where you'll find all the articles about what I just talked about. And actually my free training course kind of goes over some of the goal setting stuff I just talked, but ever since I made it like a month ago, I've already kind of changed the way that I just presented this information. So
what about on the
and I haven't added those new videos to the course, so I will be doing that eventually when I get free time. But
what about what about in the social web? Where can they find you there?
Twitter is MindGamesWeldon.
And Facebook?
And,
like a Facebook
yeah, there's
for
a
Mind
Facebook
Games?
page. I have a group, a private group, and it's Mind Games, and we talk about a lot of stuff in there. And if you want to join the group, simply go and join my site as a free member, and you'll get invited to the group. And then that's what I do on Facebook. Is I mostly just talk to people in there, and we chat about mindset and play and boost each other up.
Well, you know what, Weldon, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming to do this interview on the Any Key. You know what, it's been a lot of wealth of information. Thank you for coming out, man.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
All right.
I think awesome. So that was our interview, guys. I hope that was pretty much pretty valuable to you. I don't know, Nav, did you get to check that out? What did you think?
It's like with anything, right? Like if your mind is in the right place before like you even go into an exam, then you'll do better on it versus like being scattered, kind of like it gives you that sense of self-reassurance going into something, and that's beneficial to someone's mental health as well. One
of the fascinating things I found out for that interview is that this is a real position. Like I need to be very careful how I call this, because it's not. I called it originally an esports psychologist, but it's not. It's an esports psychological trainer. Sorry, no, psychological trainer. Sorry. An esports psychological trainer, because a psychologist requires special degree, like a certain certification.
Yeah.
It's psychological trainer, which requires different kinds of training. So I didn't realize it's actually a specific term. So let's move on to the final thoughts, because we're coming to the end of the show. So let's do final thoughts on EGL. Since coming up, it's not really a topic, but I wanted to
cover it. Should be fun. We will give you a briefing of it in next week's episode. It's cool to see a grassroots organization in Canada. There will be a lot of different things going on, so I look forward to that.
And if any of you guys are out there and going to be in the EGL, please come hit us up. I'd love to meet anybody who's watched our shows or watched your streams or a fan of our tournaments. I love talking to, like I totally got a guy come up to me in LAN ETS while I was getting a hot dog, and he's like, "I watched your show, The Anarchy," and I was like, "Really?" I was so shocked. And
You're famous, Drekken.
I don't know. I feel like it was so weird because I was in a hot dog line of all the people of all like he recognized me and he
Mhm.
recognized Aniki from all the stuff that we've done. Like I don't know. I guess I'm never really on. I'm not on camera a lot, so I guess the Aniki is ever and the only time I'm on camera. Um, Final thoughts on what did we talk about? Totally my brain. Oh, on Heroes of Newerth. Can this thing make it? Final thoughts on Heroes of the Newerth.
I think it'll have like a moment where people are intrigued, but then it'll be like this, and then right away it'll be like, blah.
Oh, the hype
There won't even be like
starts.
a staggering like fall. It'll just be like a drop. Once everyone's like, nah, I gotta get back to Dota, you know? I don't want to
I,
lose my ranking.
I have to agree with you. I'm not really going to contest it because I think that it's going to be a niche. It's going to be a niche MOBA.
Hipsters.
Hipster.
Hipster MOBA.
No, actually, you're not too far off from me. I think hipster MOBA is a good way of putting it. Final thoughts on ESL allegedly being bought by.
If they have been acquired by MTG, I only hope it means like that this will become bigger, and if it's going to be on televisions in Europe, that's kind of neat. But I don't know if our market in North America would be ready for like esports on TV.
No,
Because
I
I
still.
mean, like
I
we
don't
have
think it.
Netflix.
I don't think we're ready for esports on TV in North America. My final thoughts on it is honestly, as long as it stays like a wholesome acquisition that ESL can do as its own, it'll do really well. I'm not really too keen on it being on television. I am a huge anti-television for esports. I do not believe esports has any place on television because we don't need television and television needs us more than we need it. I'm a huge proponent of that belief. Um, so, you know, as long as they don't meddle with it, I think it'll be fine. If they do meddle with it, I think that we're going to see unfortunate death to a really great property.
Mhm.
So, final thoughts on, I guess, our guest Weldon and mindful training.
um, well, I said it earlier.
You
Like I
did.
think it helps with the mental health and just making people prepared in a way that's different
One of the
from like
things. Oh, sorry, to cut you
I'm
off.
I'm, I'm good.
One of the things I would like to see is I'd like to see actual coaches in esports change. I'd like to see esports change the way the coaches happen. One of the things Weldon mentioned, I don't know, was that coaches in esports are pretty much like retired players, or they're just kind of picked up to fill that role, and they just make players do drills. And I think that the concept of coaching is super underdeveloped in esports as a
Yes.
whole. I think the concept of a coach is more of like a figure than they are an actual person who goes and takes care of the player and grows and develops the player and builds the player up. And I think that role is super loose when we use it in any game. And
Mhm.
as we
Well, I
push
think like
forward,
High, even when he stepped down from Cloud9, said like he's not taking a coaching role, which is what a lot of people wanted to do, but he recognized like I'm not suited for that role. But it's like,
that's the thing, though. I think that's perfect example. I think a lot of things, the word suited, like there. I think there needs to be there's a certain type of person or certain mold of person. Someone dedicates themselves to be a coach. They say, "I want to be a coach." In esports, they go out and do the things that a person needs to do to be a coach, as opposed to someone who's like, "Oh, I was a pro gamer or I was a caster. I think I'm going to be a coach now." And this is transition to the role because they have that kind of pedigree. And I think that's the wrong way. And I think that's who a lot of coaches are, or they're a babysitter, essentially, where a team manager or a team will hire a coach to watch over the players and make sure they just arrive on time. And I think that's the wrong type of coach.
you need a motivator.
A motivator. And I think Weldon really put it really well that it's someone who is there to motivate. They understand the players and they understand what gets them motivated, and they trigger that in the game, right? When they're playing, when they need to be at their best. And I also think Weldon brought some interesting points about mindfulness and putting together really good goals to improve your skill. So there's that. So this comes pretty much to the end of our show. Not too bad timing after all. But I wanted to tell you guys. I want you to keep an eye. Do me a favor. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you guys right after. Nav, where can they find you? Tell us.
At navneedr, also navneedr.com, and everything is just there as an aggregate. Well, we say it as navneeder, so
Navneeder. You can find me at Draconis. That's pretty much on everything that's ever internet except Flickr. I don't have that on Flickr. Someone stole it. But everything else that's on the internet, it's at Draconis. All right. So before I tell you guys about the ESChamp stuff, because you have to follow it, this week we're going to have a very special announcement. This is my EG of where I make an announcement about an announcement. But I need you to watch our Twitter. Keep an eye on our Twitter. Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. If you have my personal Twitter, you might have noticed that I made some ominous message about things getting done in esports in my life moving forward, and we're at that point. Esports and for those of us in our community, people who participate in the ESChamp tournaments, our local community, this is going to affect you guys the most. So it's important that you stay tuned and you get ready for the announcement. We're aiming to make this before we go to EGL. Make these announcements. Actually, it has to pretty much happen before EGL. So, oh my God, he's right. I should have put a countdown site up. But yeah, stay tuned to our social medias. Follow ESChamp at ESChamp, ESChamp on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. But pay attention specifically to the social media so that when I make message, when I send word, when I send my droid out and say, help me, Obi-Wan, help me, you'll come running. But actually, it won't be helping. It's just be an announcement, and I think it's going to be really cool stuff. So, guys, this has been an episode of the Inigi. I'm Drekken, and I've been joined here with Nav, and we will see you guys later.
Bye. Congratulations, my thunderclaps.
Where was your thunderclap? Ah!